Part 3. In the distance, she could see the outermost of Erantals, the capital of the Sorceress Kingdom, 3 walls, and the imposing gate set into it. However, neither of them could draw Nia's attention away from the 2 gigantic statues which flanked the gate. They depicted an undead creature which held a bizarre staff that resembled snakes coiling around each other. Those statues were probably made in the image of the Saucer King, Ainzu or Gaon. Despite being a good distance away from them, Nia could make out the intricate detailing of the statues. In all likelihood, she would not be able to find a flaw in them even at the statues' feet. Then, she saw several human-shaped creatures working near the statues. Aren't they too big? Aren't they as high as those walls? While I know the statues are large, who are those people working down there, anyway? The others seemed to have the same questions as Nia, and the paladins began discussing the identities of those human-like creatures. Those aren't humans, are they? Yeah. Are they giants? Although, they don't seem to be the same as hill giants. Nia, a mere squire, had never seen a giant in the flesh before, but she had heard about these beings during her monster knowledge class. Giants were essentially enlarged humans, but in addition to their powerful bodies, they also possessed racial abilities. Thanks to these abilities, they could endure environments which humans would be hard-pressed to survive, so they typically made their homes in such places. They were a demi-human species which had little to do with humans, who could only live on the plains. Some races which were skilled in magic were more advanced than humanity. Race alone did not determine the goodness or wickedness of a being. One of the 13 heroes was a giant. In the Holy Kingdom, the giants known as sea giants sometimes showed up to trade. That said, giants were generally a violent and dangerous race. On the subject of dangerous giants in the human world, one would have to mention hill giants, who lived in the hills. Giantkin such as trolls and the like were also quite infamous. In that case, what were these giants doing in a city of the undead? Were there giants here in the past? Did he conquer them? Does that Saucer King command giants? I've never heard of something like that before. That surprised exclamation from one of the paladins was only to be expected. They had gathered a great deal of intelligence in preparation for their journey to the Sorceress Kingdom. Of course, a lot of that information was incomprehensible, so they could not be said to have succeeded in their objective, but that still counted as doing their due diligence. Both the ghost ship and giants were matters of mystery. Was the Saucer King an undead giant? Nia thought. But such a distinguishing characteristic ought to have showed up in their intelligence reports. Just then, Gustavo addressed her from behind. Squire Byraha, it's about time we changed formation. Move to the rear. Understood. During their journey, Nia had been at the head of the formation, but now that they were near the city, Nia would occupy the rearmost position. In turn, Remedios and Gustavo would take Nia's place at the front. Captain Custodio, shall we send an envoy out to announce us? Surely anyone would be wary of a group of people showing up near a city in full plate armor and bearing arms. Therefore, when they entered a city or village of the kingdom, they would typically send out a paladin to inform them that they were coming, and then the group would approach, bearing the flag of the Holy Kingdom. This was etiquette. After receiving Remedios' permission, they sent a paladin out before them. After reaching the gates to the Sorceress Kingdom, he turned and came back. Captain, I've informed the watchmen of the Sorceress Kingdom. They extend a welcome to us. Is that so? Got it. Then let's go. Raise the flags. Hold your chests high. Do not disgrace the name of Paladins of the Holy Kingdom. With that, the group slowly guided their horses towards the Sorceress Kingdom. Finally, they reached the stately-looking gates, as well as the giants working there. The giants seemed to be cleaning the statues, as though to make the beautiful statues even more beautiful. They glanced at the giants' appearance, and their skin was bluish-white, while their hair and moustaches were white. They seemed to be dressed in primitive clothing made from the hide of some kind of beast, as well as exquisitely made chain-mail armor. What kind of giants are those? Nia's keen senses picked up the conversation from the front row. This is just a guess, but I think they should be frost giants, right? Remedios replied vaguely. Are they strong? What powers do they have? Honestly, give me a break. Frost giants are giants who live in cold climates, and they are immune to cold. In contrast, they are weak to fire. I see. So if we have to fight one, we should use fire, is that right? Well, pretty much. Mithril-ranked adventurers should be able to beat them with ease. However, they can train and learn like us, and sometimes you might encounter a giant with warrior skills. Therefore, you must be careful. Those were giants. One could train to be a warrior, a magic caster, or a thief. It was not just humans who could train themselves in such techniques. While creatures with racial advantages generally were not inclined towards such training, some of them would put in the effort to pick up such skills, and that made him very difficult opponents. Nia's father had repeatedly told her, beasts intimidate you with their appearance. But a powerful foe who does not appear to be one is very frightening. Well, I've never fought a giant before. Still, ogres are a different matter. Take care you don't upset them by mentioning ogres in the same breath as them. To the sea giants, at least, it would be like comparing a monkey to a human. Of course, that's a rumor from a bard, so there's no telling how much of that is true. The Holy Kingdom can't hire sea giants, but the Sorceress Kingdom can employ frost giants. Which of them is stronger? I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that. While the captain obviously wanted sea giants to be stronger, the important thing now was the sort of treatment these frost giants faced in the Sorceress Kingdom. Were they treated as friends, enslaved with force, or were they paid for their services in a mutually beneficial relationship? There was no way to tell from the forms of the silently laboring giants. Still, it would seem these giants are excellent laborers. The Holy Kingdom has worked with demi-humans in the past, but if they expanded the scope of that, it could do many more things. Of course, the Holy Kingdom would never do that. While there were races such as the Mermen, with whom the Holy Kingdom had a long history of mutual cooperation, the memories of war with demi-humans still remained, so such a thing would never be accepted. Had the Sorceress Kingdom only accepted giants? Or did it also take in other strange races? If she encountered demi-humans here similar to the ones who had attacked the Holy Kingdom, could she rein in the anger within her heart? No, if I don't control myself. For instance, what would happen if she met a snakeman here? It would be a snakeman who came from a land far removed from the Holy Kingdom, living in peace with humans in this nation. Perhaps it might not be possible to use an emotional appeal to dissuade the others from showing hostility, but given the present circumstances, they would have to do just that. Nia looked uneasily at Remedio's back. Could she do it? She mentally shook her head. Worrying about Remedios like that was very rude. She was the leader of this diplomatic party, and she was working to save the country. She could certainly do that much. Such concerns were being disrespectful to her. Can we just enter like that? How about going in through another gate? The gates might be open, but the giants were working. She was worried about whether they would mind the passing of the humans at their feet. We'll go in like this. If word gets out that the Hoy Kingdom's emissaries went in through another door because they were afraid of giants, everyone who knows will laugh at us. Understood. Then we shall obey your instructions, Captain. And so, the group advanced toward the gates. Fortunately, the giants took a look at them and then stopped their work for a while, allowing them to pass without incident. Nia felt that this was less goodwill towards humans than a mysterious sentiment towards visitors to the Sorceress Kingdom. Normally, they would have been stopped outside the gates. But since they had sent someone to announce them, they were ushered in by human soldiers who looked like street guards, and the group passed through the gates, under the light of magical lanterns. Their illumination was distinctly different from that of the sun, and the trained warhorse harumphed uneasily under their radiance. Welcome to Erantal, city of the Sorceress Kingdom. Is this your first time visiting here, honored paladins? Ah, yes. I see. Then, I beg your pardon, but can you please dismount? This was probably a luggage check, Nia thought. While it was somewhat inconsiderate to conduct one on people calling themselves emissaries from another nation, they were justified in doing so. There was no protest as the group got off their horses and obeyed the instructions to walk this way please, which brought them to a huge door beside the gates. Going by common sense, this ought to be a side tower, a combination of troop barracks and a defense base. Please enter here. This city is different from the cities of the kingdom and the empire in that it possesses all manner of different locations within. So first-time visitors will have to attend a workshop in the room AEAD. A workshop? Yes. This is to minimize unnecessary disturbances. Only people who have attended this lecture may enter the city. What say you? They had come all this way, so obviously they could not refuse the request to attend. While it was to be expected, Remedio's answer was a definite yes. Then, may I request that you give your weapons into our safekeeping? Naturally, they could not refuse that, but just as naturally, Remedios had a put-upon look on her face. Remedio's sword was a divine treasure of the Holy Kingdom. Just by bearing it, she would not even need to kneel before the Holy King. She could not surrender such a treasure before even meeting the King of the realm, and after hearing that much, the soldier nodded in understanding. Is that so? Then it can't be helped. Then please remain as you are and enter, everyone. The truth is, holding onto your swords was intended to ensure your safety. In that case, please promise me that you will not draw your weapons no matter what once you're inside. If you can't do that, I'd advise you to leave this city instead. Understood. We shall return the trust you have shown in allowing us to bear our swords, and so we shall not draw our weapons while we're inside. Remedios touched her hand to her chest to the emblem of the Holy Kingdom there as she made that declaration. She swore to do so on her honor as a paladin and that of the Holy Kingdom. Then I'll trust you to do that. First, I shall ask the guard for this area to step outside. Within the Holy Kingdom, this was an absolute oath that might even draw gasps of surprise from those who saw it, but it was much more mildly received in other countries. After that bland response, the guard knocked on the door. After that, the door slowly opened, and what suddenly appeared before their eyes was Nia Wente, in a voice that was somewhere between a gasp and a wail. The being that slowly emerged was excessively large in every dimension. Its black-colored full-plate armor was covered in red tracery that resembled blood vessels, and it was covered in spikes. Demonic horns protruded from its helmet, and its open-faced helmet revealed a rotted human visage. Its empty eye sockets contained points of red light filled with hatred and the anticipation of carnage. The temperature in the room plunged in an instant, as though the darkness was chilling them. Please do not draw your weapons. Everyone's shoulders shuddered from the guard's shout. Nothing will happen if you do not draw your swords. But if you do, you will be slain instantly. After that, you will be bound to eternal suffering. Please don't make me have to witness something like that again." His mournful cry sounded like he had experienced this sort of thing before. Had he personally witnessed such an event in the past? The undead being slowly glared at Nia and the others. There was the feeling that it was waiting for them to draw their blades. "And this undead being is..." Remedio's voice trembled faintly as she spoke. "They are guards who are stationed throughout this city in large numbers." "Really?" Remedio's quaking voice was somewhere between surprise, fear, and consternation. Nia felt the same way as her. It was unthinkable that a nation would possess so many undead of such extraordinary power. Excuse me. Is this undead creature under the control of His Majesty the Saucer King?" The guard nodded in response to Nia's reflexive question. "Indeed, that is so. Also, he rules over undead who are more powerful than this one over here." "Is it not dangerous?" The soldier responded immediately to Gustavo's question. He sounded like he was dying to inform him of this. "Yes, to date, there have been no incidents in this city where people were killed without provocation. The undead were beings who hated the living. As someone who could utterly dominate him and keep him from harming living creatures, the Saucer King must be a truly incredible person." Nia was deeply impressed by the might of the Saucer King. "I see. Then, can you take us inside the room? Please follow me." The black undead creature slowly stepped away from the door, and the soldier boldly walked past him. In contrast, Nia and the others seemed to be looking at each other to see who would make the first move. While he said that this undead creature was ruled by the Saucer King, those bonds were not visible to the naked eye. This made walking in front of it several times more frightening to them than going before, say, a carnivore who was unchained, but which would not attack because its belly was full. Remedios planned to go forward first, but Gustavo stopped her. After that, he looked at Nia. "I'm the canary, huh?" There was nothing wrong with that logic when one considered whose life would matter least if it was lost. Even so, despite their determination to protect the weak, their own squire was a different matter. Nia steeled herself for what lay ahead, squeezed her eyes shut, and then strode forward. After taking several steps forward, she slowly opened her eyes. She had not been cut down. She quickened her pace, and hastily moved past the undead being. After seeing Nia had crossed safely, the other paladins followed behind her. In the end, nobody was attacked, and they reached their destination. The soldier opened the door, revealing a long table and many plain chairs. "Please wait in this room for a while." "Understood. Thank you for leading us here." Remedios jerked her chin, and Gustavo produced a small pouch from safekeeping and handed it to the soldier who had brought them here. It was a tip. "Please don't." His rejection was so fierce that it was almost like a cry of despair. The soldier raised his hands above his head, utterly unwilling to touch that pouch. Everyone was shocked by his reaction, as was Nia. She could not think of any reason for the soldier's reaction. "We are all paid by His Majesty, so please allow me to refuse your show of consideration. But since you did us a service, and it's not a very big sum, no, there's no need for that. I'll wait outside until the seminar is over." The soldier swiftly retreated from the room. The remaining people looked at each other, mystified by the soldier's overwrought reaction. "Is that really all right?" He said. "No, so there's nothing we can do about it." Tipping was a natural thing. While not tipping was not a problem, most people of stature did practice tipping. Of course, some people did so to minimize the time need for luggage inspections and ask people to take care of various small matters, but they had not made any such requests. Frankly speaking, they were simply doing what would be expected of people in their station. If that was an instruction from the Saucer King, then what was his aim in doing so? "We weren't told where to sit," so it's free seating. Then, after everyone sat as the captain had directed, a short time passed before the door opened once more. Nia turned back, and then her eyes went wide. The entity who had entered was not human. It was a creature whose species had a human's upper body and a snake's lower body, a naga. There were several offshoots of the Naga race, for instance, the sea Nagas, which occasionally appeared along the Holy Kingdom's coasts, but which subspecies this one belonged to was unclear. However, all of them were demi-humans who held no goodwill for humanity, yet Nia did not feel terribly afraid. All this was thanks to that black undead. Compared to that, she could at least muster up a rational response to this. Was that what it was all about? That frightening undead creature was not just intended to frighten people, but to numb people to the shock of seeing demi-humans. They really did put a lot of thought into letting demi-humans coexist with humans. It would seem the Saucer King was not just a powerful undead being. The Naga slithered through the silent room, paying no heed to the group's response as he moved in front of them, whereupon he bowed slightly. "Thank you for waiting, dear humans who wish to enter this city. This one is an immigration official for the Sorceress Kingdom, Raya Spenia I Indarun. Well, it is hardly a vocation which will bring this one into contact with you, so there is no need to remember that name. Then, without further ado, let us begin. This one will briefly explain the differences between living in this city and the surrounding cities, as well as things one should be aware of. Firstly, drawing weapons within the city is strictly forbidden." That was a very reasonable admonition, and Nia let the tension flow out of her shoulders. Many would think of it as an ordinary reminder. Arius pointed to his face with a slender finger. "It's written all over your faces. However, I would like you to remember that many races walk the streets of the Sorceress Kingdom. You have already seen the undead holding their heads up high and walking proudly through the streets. Even if they strike you as dangerous beings, drawing your weapon on them without provocation would be a serious crime. No. A moment please. Does that mean we must flee if a dangerous being appears? That is not the case. Even if there are dangerous entities in the city, none of them will harm you. Even so, there are cases where people feel afraid, or they feel they might be attacked, and thus they draw their weapons anyway. That is what this one was talking about. Can you be sure we won't be attacked? Oh yes. Of the many dangerous creatures who walk through this place, those who will most alarm you are probably His Majesty's subordinates." Arius smiled tiredly. "Once you stay here for more than a day, your wariness will wane and you will no longer mind them. Well, the first day is the biggest problem. And of course drawing your weapons in self-defense is perfectly fine." "I see. So it's all right as long as it's done in self-defense?" Yes. Also, mind control magic will be used in the course of investigating crimes in this city. Please keep that in mind." Nia's eyes went wide. Nor was she the only one to do so. A commotion erupted from the paladins. As their representative, Remedios stated her opinion. "A moment please. Is the Sorceress Kingdom such a crude nation? Do they allow the use of spells? Are the courts also that way?" In general, mind control magic was not used when questioning people about crimes. For instance, by using dominate, one could make anyone a criminal for a brief period of time. By using charm, one could find a patsy for any crime. The fact that mind control magic could be used to manufacture offenders to one's liking caused it to be viewed as a crude act practiced only by tyrants. The courts also use similar means. "Oh, but I can confidently say that His Majesty will not compel you to speak untruths. On that point you need not worry." How could anyone believe that? The use of mind control magic meant that once a nation decided that someone was a dangerous individual, they could paint him as a criminal and then deal with them. No human being would trust an undead being they had never met before. Nobody said that, but they probably all felt the same way. Also, I wish to ask, if you will not enter, will you be returning right away? No, we can't do that. Please allow us entry. Ho! That was the quickest answer yet. Traders would usually ask for time and then discuss among themselves. Then, let us continue. After that, Arius touched on how undead horses drew carriages along the roads, and other weird things that seemed to mess with her mind. However, when he said, "Sometimes dragons will fly overhead, so do not be alarmed or let your horses run amok," her face twitched. Having dragons fly above a city was not something that could be summarized as a big incident. Dragons were creatures against whom even fully armed and prepared heroes might fall in combat. That was why all warriors dreamed of slaying a dragon. Slaying an overwhelmingly superior creature with the strength they had honed, their comrades, and their weapons was a glorious deed, and a deed that only the most superlative of warriors could perform. Surely it would cause a great disturbance if such a dragon were to appear in a dwelling place for humans. The undead are fine, because we've already seen them as guards, but dragons? No. Still, having one fly overhead as a sentry ought to be fine, right? Also, they have many age categories, and their strength varies greatly depending on their age. Freshly hatched dragons were still dragons. However, such a tiny dragon was more easily controlled than the undead creature from just now. Then, that is about it. Thank you for listening. Now, can you follow the soldier back to the gate after you leave this room? Forgive me, but may I ask a question? Remedios raised a hand. And what might that be? You don't intend to kill or eat us, do you? Perhaps this one might have thought of doing so in the past. However, that is strictly forbidden now. In addition, after seeing His Majesty, I feel that there is no point in feuding with my fellow inferior life forms. Is His Majesty really that powerful? Arius smiled tiredly. He is 10 times more powerful than you can imagine. Him aside, even his subordinates are extraordinarily potent. Simply put, there is no safer city than one which His Majesty defends. Perhaps she was thinking of something, but Remedios fell silent. This one does not know why you have come here. However, let me give you some sage advice that a friend with whom I take tea, a widow, told me. Declaring your opposition to His Majesty would be extremely foolish. A wise man would immediately throw himself at his feet and beg for mercy. There was a shocking sense of reality to those words. While he said he had heard it from a friend, it was more like that the Naga called Arius was speaking from personal experience. Thank you for your advice. Remedios stood, followed closely by everyone else. Nia bowed to Arius from where she stood at the rear of the group before leaving the room.